And then after you do that, if you can do screen sharing for me as well, because I'm going to need that.
Okay, so we are recording, and
okay, yeah, I'm Hongji Wang from History Department. On my first day, actually, here at Armstrong, I just saw Kristen, and later, we met many times talking about international programs, a lot of international activities. Kristen, actually, I believe, she has helped many of us, develop study abroad programs. And I really appreciate, her contribution, in developing international education here on the campus, and amazingly helped promote cultural diversity, at Armstrong and later Georgia Southern. So I just want to, express my appreciation, to her. Okay, go to you, Laura.
okay, I guess I'll just do a more formal introduction and just give you a brief bio. So Kristen Karem is a dedicated professional who has spent the previous 14 years at Georgia Southern, and she currently serves as the director of the Office of Global Engagement, where she oversees the university's efforts to expand its global initiatives. Kristen has a passion for promoting cross-cultural understanding and has been instrumental in sending students from Georgia Southern to study abroad all over the world. She first became involved in global education when she participated in a study abroad program in Southeast Asia, which sparked her interest in helping others experience the transformative power of international education. So we welcome Kristen, and I have to add that for me also, my one and only study abroad program when I was an undergraduate was a life-changing experience. So thank you for doing this work, really.
We've never had a student who's not come back and been changed, because that's the whole point is, and I think it's addictive. Like I was talking to my admin earlier, and I have on the notebook that I use to take notes in different meetings, the stickers for the airports, kind of like a luggage tag with all of the airports. And it's so fun to look at just the names of those and the memories and all of the people in the friends. And so I in March, my husband had a meeting in Mexico, and so I went with him, and he kept saying, now where we were at the resort was an all-inclusive, and I am not an all-inclusive. I'm not a cruise person. Like, it's just not how I travel. And he kept saying, you cannot leave the resort. And I'm like, what? Why? And then I was Dustin about it too, and he's like, you cannot leave the resort. And both of them at different points were like, you will find some old woman on the side of the road making tacos, and she's going to be like, come on to my house and I'll teach you how to make, tortillas. And you'll be like, let's go. So because that's the best part, the people you meet. That's the whole reason to travel. The people and the food.
Right.
So if I can get you to enable screen sharing.
Yeah, I did that. You should be able to.
Oh, it's still saying host disabled participant screen sharing on my end.
Let me see what's going on with that.
So while you're looking at that, I'll just kind of talk a little bit about COIL, because, as we talk about these relationships that we have, it is really the relationships that make the experiences meaningful. But what we learned during COVID is that sometimes you can't travel, and travel comes with a cost. It's not cheap, and even we're seeing. I was so excited during COVID because there were some flights that were so inexpensive to parts of the world that are normally very expensive to get to, but we're seeing flight prices start to get back up to normal. And so part of the idea behind COIL is how can we create these relationships without having to travel, and for students who may not have the means to travel, because that's another conversation that's kind of happening is, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. So a lot of this is about access and being innovative in how we really expose our students to the world. So this is, I'm not going to read these slides because I'm going to send them, Lauren Hongji, I'll send them to you if you want to share them out. But basically, COIL stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. And so it's embedded within the classroom. And so it's a way to give those cultural competencies to students without having to travel. And I'm hoping this video will play. This is from Florida International, but I love just the synopsis of it. And I think they did a fabulous job, and it's 2 minutes, which is also within my attention span.
Imagine trying to teach a person to swim without water. Well, the same holds true for global learning. If we want our students to gain the knowledge and skills of global citizenship, they need opportunities to work on shared challenges with people who are different from them, in our classrooms, our communities, around the world, and online. COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, is a powerful form of global learning for both teachers and their students. With COIL, teachers in different institutions, countries, and cultures partner to design experiences challenge their students to connect their diverse knowledge and perspectives across borders of time, place, language, and discipline. COIL is an accessible form of global learning because it's often embedded within existing face-to-face, hybrid, or fully online courses. COIL collaborations can involve courses in the same discipline, such as students comparing different marine conservation practices across the world, or in complementary disciplines, such as architecture and anthropology students teaming up to create more culturally responsive building designs. COIL experiences usually last from 4 to 8 weeks, and they involve 3 main components. Icebreaker activities that help students get to know and trust each other. A collaborative task that demands diverse contributions from every person participating. And reflection activities that help students transform their COIL experiences into new ways of thinking about themselves, others, and the world around them. Sure, COIL uses technology to connect people and their ideas, and it often involves voice and video conferencing. But you don't have to be super tech savvy to communicate and collaborate. Great COIL experiences can involve low bandwidth, asynchronous exchanges using nothing but a smartphone. COIL faculty and students thrive when they're supported by a team of international education leaders, instructional technologists, and educational developers. And COIL is a critical component of robust, resilient international partnerships. COIL is powerful on its own, but when it connects faculty and students to other opportunities to engage with the world's knowledge network, such as language learning and intercultural dialogues, and teaching, research, study, service, and internships abroad, COIL maximizes its potential to enable global learning for all.
So this is really the components that it really needs to be. So it can be interdisciplinary, it can be the same, but it needs to be embedded into currently existing courses. So we're not going through curriculum committee, we're not trying to recreate the wheel. We're really taking what already exists. And it's not a co-taught course, it's a co-collaboration. And we'll talk a little bit later about why it's not the same course, it's the same program or project or presentation that students are doing. And it's not this says 5 to 15 weeks. I don't think you can do a 15-week project. I don't think it makes any sense. I think 4 to 8 weeks is really kind of the goal time frame that you're looking at. Whatever the students are working on, the rubric needs to be the same, whether it's our students or the students from the partner institution. What they're doing is the same. same, but essentially it's just embedded in the class, project, paper, presentation, in small groups. Half of the small group is our students, half of the small group is from our partner institution. So the students are working on something together, and it doesn't have to be during classroom time because we don't need to figure out time zones. I spend enough time doing Zoom calls at 2 in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, trying to get our partner institutions. So we don't have to worry about classroom times. It's something that the students will do as a graded project outside of the classroom. We just have to make sure that that rubric is the same, and that it really counts for a similar portion of the class. Because if I'm doing the project and it only accounts for 5% of my grade, but my partner at the other institution, it counts for 50% of their grade, there's a misalignment in really the amount of time and energy. So we just want to make sure that there are some things that make it easier to kind of work together. I am a visual learner, so I like visuals, which is part of the reason I put this together. But I also have a lot of charts in here because that helps me envision things. And so you can just see there's professor collaborations that are happening and student collaborations that are happening. They talked earlier about the different phases. So there's the icebreaker, building the teams, and we have some things to help with that. We also have Erin Myers did a book called The Cultural Map, and she talks about how to develop trust in teams that are from different cultures. And so we've got some things to help you communicate with students about the culture that they're going to be interacting with, and how to really navigate that. So for example, we sometimes talk about how open and honest we are as Americans, which is true or not true depending on the culture that we're working with. So for example, in the Netherlands, directness is taken to a whole different level. We are not direct at all when compared to people on a team in the Netherlands, but we're very direct when on a team with people from South Korea. So we have some resources to help our students really kind of be able to engage and set expectations of how that team is going to work. And then there's, discussions, and then the heart of it is really that project. And so the beautiful about this is that there are actually two different HIPs that are involved. So this COIL in itself is considered a high impact practice, but the presentation can be a poster presentation, which can bring in that second HIP practice. So if you're doing, your tenure review, post-tenure review, advancement, some of this can work into that package as well. So the reason I said I don't like the 15-week programs is because when you look at the academic calendar, our calendar does not align with the rest of the world. Nobody's really on the same calendar. So this is kind of standard for most of the US, which is why even though we start in August, because we're a Southern school, so I have twin daughters who are sophomores at a school in New York, and they don't start until after Labor Day, which makes sense because in New York, you don't start before Labor Day. So this is kind of the average within the US. But if you look at our fall semesters, Mexico and Brazil are in their semesters before we start. But a lot of Europe is not even close to thinking about it yet. And our European partners, when they take their holiday, they seriously take their holiday. So you're not going to be doing prep work while they're on their holiday. So that 4 to 8 weeks is nice because you can find the overlap so that it works for both classes, that it may be at the beginning of your class or at the end of your class. And the partner institution, it may be opposite for them for where they're at within that semester. But the 15-week, I think, is just not realistic. And it's also not realistic for our students. Their attention spans, I think, are shorter than they've been in the past. I know the ones that I'm working with, it's easier to get them to complete those shorter term programs. So that I really think a 5 to 6 week is the sweet spot for these projects. The benefits, I'm actually going to come back to this. So we're having a lot of conversations about internationalizing the curriculum. We're having conversations about access, you know, how accessible are things to students. And the reality is, for our study abroad, for some of our students, it's not. And for some of our students, it's not part of their thought process. When you look at first generation students, they're not thinking about study abroad because it's not part of their reality yet. And so this is a wonderful way to give these skills to students that are necessary skills. When you look at, I've been working with Glenn Gebney on a lot of things because the career day one, they're actually using some international modules to build into that, because those intercultural competencies are really what employers are looking for. And we know that with our traditional study abroad, on average, students are 80% more likely to get placed into a job. They're 85% more likely to get into grad school. Average starting salary is $6,000 more. So we can take some of those actual tangible benefits, and that's part of the higher education kind of curve, is talking about the ROI, the job placement, which is not within my philosophy about higher education, but within the reality of the conversations that we're having. And so this is a way for us to really have that conversation, provide those skills in a way that all of our students can access. I know we wanted to stay within about a 20-minute range. So again, this presentation is going to go out. This video is really professors talking about their experiences, and then also students talking about what they got out of it. And one of the students that I really appreciate, this is a SUNY school, a SUNY community college that did this. And one of the students talks about never having left New York. And as you think about the students in our classroom, we have a lot of students who've never left Georgia. We have students who've never left Chatham, Bryan counties. And so for them, this is a wonderful way to kind of introduce that the world is much bigger than our little tiny piece, and the connectedness. Really, there are two different collaborations that are going on within a COIL. So professors are working together. Two professors are coming together, working on the program, the project. How do they overlap? How do they work within the flows of the classroom, making sure that they align with what we already have? Because of course, it's going to be part of assessment, because we assess everything. And I have an assessment specifically for COIL. And then really for the students to start that intercultural exchange and figure out time zones and figure out cultures and all of those things that you have to navigate, that are kind of part of that experience as well. This is a list of the syllabi that I have that are examples of how to do that. And again, I'll link those to the presentation as well, so that you can kind of see those. And then, so next steps, what comes next? So COIL is an organization in which we're a member. So it is an international organization. We use that term not just about the structure of the class, the pedagogy, but we also are talking about it from an organizational standpoint. And so May 9th is the next partnering fair. And essentially what a partnering fair is it's where we come together and we say, hey, I have this class who wants a partner. Does this align with what anybody has? And so I've put together the things that we need for that partnering fair. So the photo is not mandatory, but kind of like on a resume in some countries, you would put your picture. You would not do that in the US, but you would do that other places. You can do that on the COIL as well. I really don't think that it matters, but in some of the guides, they suggest to do that. The biggest things are really the academic discipline, the dates that you're looking at. Again, it talks a little bit further down here about the motivation. I don't think that really matters either. Sometimes the title or position does matter. For some cultures, that title is really important. So they need to see, where you fit within the structure. But the biggest things are really this discipline, the field, the title of the course, and the course level, because we want to make sure that we're aligning that well, the dates, and then the anticipated size, because we also don't want one of our classes that has 15 students with a partner that has 75 students. We want it to be very balanced on both ends. So that's May 9th. So if you would like to do this for the fall, I need this information by May 9th so we can find a partner to really be able to match up and make that work. Grant Gearhart has done a couple of COILs. And so if you're not ready for the fall, which that's okay, because I feel like, you know, our semesters get compressed and time goes faster. I love that saying, the days are long, but the years are short, because I really feel like yesterday was January, the beginning of January, we're starting the semester, but yet my days are really long. So if you're not going to be ready for the fall, Grant and I are going to do a couple of workshops in September. We're waiting for CTE. Are they still called CTE? Whatever the faculty center is, we're still working with them on nailing down those specific dates, but it will be in September. And they're going to be workshops about how to build this into your classroom, what kind of things make sense. So this is a great overview, but if you feel like you need a little bit more guidance to really get some of that nitty-gritty details down, we'll be doing that in September. And he's going to talk about it from his perspective of actually having done it and working with the partner, and where it's easy, where it's not easy, things that he's learned. Because certainly, ideas are great, but it helps to have somebody who's seen some of those unintended consequences, some of those hidden struggles that happen. I also have all of the references there, and as always, you're welcome to reach out. My office number rings on both campuses, so it doesn't matter where I'm at, that phone rings. But I spend a good portion of my day in meetings. I figured it out last semester, and I average about 7 Zoom meetings a day. And so text messages are sometimes the most impactful and efficient way to get an answer to me. My calendar is also public. If you want to meet, feel free to put anything on there. I try to have the days that I'm going to be on what campus clearly marked, but kind of like today, I had not intended to be in Statesboro today, but Wednesday or Thursday, I had an 8 o'clock meeting that was put on there that meant I had to be here. So sometimes they change, but certainly thanks to Zoom, it makes COIL much easier because we've gotten much more comfortable with communicating in a digital format. But feel free to reach out to me in any way. And again, I'm working with international partners, so I don't work a typical work day. I know the university technically is 8 to 5, but the international clock, it doesn't quite allow for that. So and it's also, it's nice to chat with people when you're a little bit more relaxed. So feel free to use any of that contact information on there. I know when I was talking to Hongji, he said keep it to 20 minutes so we can have 20 minutes to have question and answer.
Good time,
so I've tried to kind of fly through this. So what questions does everybody have? Any points of clarification?
Actually, if you don't mind, since you kind of mentioned that there have been lessons learned, if you could give us just a very short preview of that.
Yeah, so some of it really is around that student collaboration in communicating expectations. And so, and I would say that this is not really a student thing, but I think we all do better when we have clear expectations of how much time we really should spend working on something. That rubric used to grade needs to be the same for everybody. And that's where the bulk of the work needs to be put in, because you just can't have a whole lot of gray area in there. We're not a good inferring culture. Other cultures sometimes do better with inferring between the lines. Not our students are not falling in that area as well. They're just very typical Americans. They need things really laid out and detailed.
If you don't mind, I don't mean to hog, but I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So how do you handle the foreign language aspect of things?
So in that partnering request, one of the things is the language. And I didn't hit on that because we just don't have, Grant's a Spanish teacher, so his is a little bit different because they're focused on that language component. For most people, it's not going to be. So we're going to ask for fluency in English and that everything be done in English. Because, you know, in your English classes, in your history classes, you're just not having students where you have an entire class that can communicate in another language. But I think there's a benefit to having non-native English speakers who are fluent in English, because sometimes there are still some barriers. I always laugh. Sometimes our students have the biggest adjustments when we do exchanges in English speaking countries because they don't anticipate any issues. They think, oh, you know, Australia speaks English, like how hard is it going to be? It's a different country, it's a different culture. So they sometimes are hit the hardest. Whereas, you know, when you think about, we send a lot of students to Japan, and it's a very, very different structure culturally. And those students, I think, know going in, this is not going to be an American experience. And so it is going to be different. So it's just, I think there's value to having a little bit of that rub and a little bit of that uncomfort in trying to figure out, what are you talking about? So I sometimes give the example. My kids and I did an escape room in Florida one time. We'd gone down, my husband had a work event, so we went and we just did fun stuff. And so we did an escape room, and we had a gentleman, I think he was from New Zealand, I can't remember, in there. And so in our group, and we were trying to figure something out, and he kept saying, give me the torch, give me the torch. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the flashlight, that's a torch. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, it's the little things that catch you. It's the little things that you're like, oh yeah.
I'm going to pause the recording just not to make the video too long, so it doesn't intimidate people, but thank you. That was a great explanation. Thank you so much.